so now for the movement via keyboards. This is going to be a relatively easy step, given that we already know how to move something. So we just need to define an axis that's going to move left or right depending on the keys we press. So going back to Unity, I'm going to go into Edit, Project Settings, and Input. It's already expanded. So notice that you have this horizontal axis, and the negative button for that is left, the left arrow key, and the positive button is the right. What is a negative and a positive button? A negative button is something that when pressed is going to give you a negative value, and the positive button when pressed is going to give you a positive button. So this is what defines an axis, okay? So you can use this horizontal axis, or maybe you can define your own. Let's define our own. I'm going to expand the size to 19 so we don't lose any of the Unity's predefined inputs. And there's another cancel one, which is, the last one gets duplicated. I'm going to expand it, change its name to maybe our arrow input. And then for negative button, we can press A, hit enter, and positive button, we can press D, hit enter. Okay, so now we just have to grab the value of this input, and it's going to be a negative value when we press A, it's going to be positive when we press D. Very simple. So going back to our script here, we just have to grab this input as I told earlier. So let's attach it to a floating point value. I'm gonna give a name that can be keys movement, and this is going to be whatever value is retrieved by input.getAxis, and the axis I want to get is what's the name that I gave? Or input, or arrow input. Okay, so now it's a very tricky thing, because we can't just multiply by this position, because if we do so, what's going to happen is that when we press D and move the mouse to the right, let's say, we're going to move twice as fast. That's cheating, of course. So we need to verify when just one of these elements is different than 0, and then we can move our platform. So when both of these are different than 0, that means that both of these are receiving inputs, and that's cheating, so we want to avoid that. We can check if mouse X movement is different than 0. Then we can add this line of code, which is going to make the object move to the left or to the right depending on mouse input. And we can add an else if, so we can check for another condition. Let's just check for the keys movement here. And then we can of course just copy and paste this line, but instead of writing mouse X movement, which we know that is 0, if we get to this else if, it means that mouse X needs to be 0. So instead of multiplying by mouse X movement, we multiply by keys movement. Of course, we need to verify if this is different than 0, which means that there's any input going on. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, and notice that we're clamping regardless of key movement or mouse movement. So this is going to happen, as said, regardless of any movement that happened. Even if no movement happened, we're going to clamp anyways. That's of course waste of processing, but in this case it doesn't really matter because it's a simple game. Okay, so once we go back to Unity, we can either move by keyboard and by mouse, but when we try to move in the same way with mouse and keyboard, it doesn't go twice as fast. And this is it.